As I sit here, staring out the window at the golden autumn leaves drifting gently to the ground, I'm reminded of how things have changed. Life feels different now at 75, quieter in some ways, louder in others, with each day carrying its own small mysteries. Just last week, I found myself rummaging through an old box of photos, the kind we all have stuffed in a closet somewhere. Pictures of a life gone by, of loved ones, friends, and places that once meant the world. In that box, I came across a photo from my 40th birthday party. There I was, laughing with John and Linda, our arms around each other, glasses raised high. I remember we were celebrating in a little restaurant we loved, back when all of us had big plans for the years to come. We thought we knew everything. How to work hard, raise kids, pay bills, and still make time for each other. But looking at that photo now, I couldn't help but laugh, because life certainly had some lessons in store that none of us could have predicted. As the years went on, one by one, the things that seemed to matter so much back then began to lose their weight. I noticed the little things I used to worry about, like whether my car was the newest model, or if my lawn looked as nice as the neighbors. They no longer seemed important. And in their place, new questions started to arise. Why was I keeping that old gym membership when my back wouldn't let me do half the exercises anymore? Why did I feel the need to answer every social invitation when I genuinely just wanted a quiet evening at home? So here we are, older, hopefully wiser, and certainly more discerning. If you're like me, you may have also noticed that some things just don't make sense anymore. Maybe it's that we finally have the clarity to see what matters and what doesn't. Or perhaps it's simply that our needs and priorities have shifted. Either way, there are a few things that I, and maybe you too, no longer feel the need to fuss over. Let me take you through these 9 things that, after 70, just don't make sense anymore. Think of this as a heart-to-heart chat from one old friend to another. A gentle reminder that sometimes it's okay to let go. Number 1. Keeping up with all the latest trends. I remember when my friend Jim called me up, excited as a teenager, telling me all about the latest smartphone he had just bought. "This one has more features than I can count," he said, his voice buzzing. So I asked him a simple question. "Jim, what do you actually use your phone for?" He chuckled, then admitted, "Well, mostly for calling and checking my email. But it's nice to have all those extra features, right?" Now, Jim and I both grew up in a time where a phone was just a phone. If you were lucky, you had a rotary dial and a long enough cord to reach the kitchen. But here we were, decades later, being sold on things like facial recognition and virtual reality. And it hit me. How much do we really need all these new things? By the time we reach 70, we know what works for us. There's no longer a need to chase every trend or to keep up with gadgets and styles that don't add real value to our lives. After all, we've lived enough years to know that simplicity often brings the most joy. I don't need a dozen apps on my phone. I need the basics that keep me connected to family and friends. And as for clothes, I'm comfortable in my favorite pair of jeans and a sweater. I've got nothing to prove, and that's a beautiful thing. I think of Mary, an old friend who lived her whole life with a practical outlook. She once told me, "If it doesn't make my day-to-day any easier or more enjoyable, then I don't need it." She's happily used the same flip phone for nearly a decade. And you know what? She's perfectly content. So maybe, like Mary and me, you feel ready to leave the latest and greatest trends behind. We know ourselves now. We know what makes us feel good and what truly matters. There's a great freedom in stepping away from the pressures to keep up with it all and embracing the comfort of what we already know and love. Number 2. Worrying about what others think. When I was younger, I used to worry about how people saw me. Did my boss think I was working hard enough? Did the neighbors think our family was put together? Did my kids' friends' parents think we were doing okay? It was like living with a mirror always in front of me, reflecting what I thought others expected me to be. But somewhere along the way, I realized something. People are too busy worrying about themselves to think much about me. And even if they did, why should I let it shape my choices? A good friend of mine, Margaret, has the same story. She used to be the kind of person who'd clean the whole house before guests came over, stressing over every little detail. One day, her daughter came to visit and saw her in a frenzy. "Mom, we're here to see you, not inspect the house." That's when it hit her. She didn't need to impress anyone. She just needed to be herself, and the people who cared about her would accept that. After 70, we've earned the right to let go of this burden. There's no sense in bending to anyone else's expectations. Our value isn't tied up in what others think. It's in who we are, in the life we've built, and the people we love. At this stage, we've realized that the people who matter will love us just as we are. So, when I find myself worrying about appearances, I remind myself of Margaret. She's happier now than ever, and her home is as welcoming as it ever was, just a little less perfect. If I'm comfortable and if I'm kind, then that's what truly matters. Number 3. Holding on to grudges. Life has a way of handing out its fair share of disappointments, doesn't it? Over the years, I've had my moments. Friendships that ended on a sour note, family members who said things they shouldn't have, situations that left me feeling hurt or betrayed. For a long time, I held on to those moments like heavy stones in my pocket, carrying them around as if they somehow defined me. One day, I had a conversation with an old buddy named Frank. Frank had lived a tough life. He lost his wife early, had a falling out with his brother, and had his fair share of setbacks. Yet, he seemed lighter than most people I knew. I asked him once, "How do you stay so positive after everything that's happened?" Frank looked at me with a soft smile and said, "I let it go, my friend. There's no room for that kind of weight if I want to enjoy what's left of my life." And there it was, the key. At this age, every day feels precious, and carrying old hurts only takes away from the joy we could be feeling right now. Holding grudges, I learned, doesn't change what happened. It only keeps us chained to it. After a while, I started forgiving. Not because what happened didn't matter, but because I mattered more than the anger I'd been holding. One of the most freeing moments I had was calling up an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years after a silly argument. We'd both grown stubborn over a minor issue, and before I knew it, we hadn't spoken in a decade. When I called him, I didn't know what to expect, but he laughed and said, "Why did we even stop talking?" It was like those 10 years hadn't happened. So if you're holding on to grudges, I encourage you to let them go. Life is so much lighter when we make space for love, laughter, and peace. And at 70, 80, or 90, we deserve that kind of peace. Number 4. Trying to do everything yourself. I remember when I was younger, I took pride in being able to handle things on my own. I'd fix my own leaky faucets, mow the lawn, climb up on ladders to clean the gutters, and insist on doing my own repairs around the house. There was a certain satisfaction in being able to say, "I did it myself." But as the years passed, I started to notice that some of these tasks left me feeling more tired than accomplished. My friend Ed once told me a story that has stuck with me ever since. Ed was always the do-it-yourself kind of guy. But one winter, he decided he could shovel his entire driveway during a snowstorm. Halfway through, he slipped on a patch of ice, and he ended up with a broken arm. That was the moment, he said, when I realized I didn't have to do everything myself anymore. After that, he decided to ask for help when he needed it and to hire someone for the heavier tasks. At this stage of life, it doesn't make sense to push ourselves to do everything alone. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. Whether it's calling a family member, hiring a neighbor's kid to mow the lawn, or letting a plumber take care of the repairs, there's no shame in choosing to make life a little easier. I've learned that there's something beautiful about accepting help graciously. It allows us to stay connected, and sometimes it brings new friendships into our lives. So now when something needs fixing, or when there's a heavy box to lift, I think twice before insisting on doing it myself, and I feel a certain relief in that. Accepting help has allowed me to focus on what truly matters, spending time with the people I love, staying active in ways that bring me joy, and staying healthy without unnecessary strain. Number 5. Accumulating more stuff. If there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that having more things doesn't necessarily bring more happiness. I used to believe that each new purchase, whether it was a piece of furniture, a tool, or even a fancy kitchen gadget, would somehow add to my life. And for a while, it did. But eventually, all those things added up. Closets filled up, drawers overflowed, and soon my home was brimming with things I rarely used or even looked at. It wasn't until I decided to downsize that I realized just how much I'd been holding on to. I spent weeks sorting through decades of accumulated possessions, and as I went through each item, I asked myself, do I really need this? It was eye-opening to see how many things I'd kept out of habit rather than out of need or sentiment. My friend Helen went through a similar experience. She was moving to a smaller place and felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of items she'd collected over the years. As she sorted through her things, she realized that most of them didn't hold the memories she thought they did. It was freeing, she told me. Letting go of things felt like making room for peace. After 70, the need for more stuff just doesn't make sense anymore. We've reached a point where simplicity often brings the most peace. Now, instead of holding on to things, I focus on cherishing memories. Instead of cluttering my space with objects, I try to keep only what brings me genuine joy. There's a lightness that comes with simplifying, with keeping only what I truly need and love. And so I've come to believe that life isn't about how much we have, but about how well we live with what we have. In letting go of unnecessary possessions, we create space. Space to breathe, to move freely, and to enjoy the things that genuinely matter. Number 6, stressing over perfection. If there's one thing I've learned in my 70-some years, it's that perfection is an illusion. And a tiring one at that. When I was younger, I believed that everything had to be just right. My home had to look spotless, my projects had to be flawless, and even my appearance had to be polished. I spent countless hours chasing this idea of perfection, but the truth is, it only left me feeling more stressed and less satisfied. A dear friend of mine, Diane, went through the same thing. Diane was known for her immaculate home and perfectly organized garden. She'd spend hours making sure every flower was trimmed and every piece of furniture was in its place. But as she got older, she started feeling worn out by all that upkeep. One day, she told me, I realized that I was spending more time trying to make things look perfect than actually enjoying them. After 70, I think many of us start to see the beauty in imperfection. We realize that a little dust on the shelf or a wrinkle in the tablecloth doesn't change the warmth of a gathering or the joy of a moment. Our lives are richer because of the memories we create, not because of the perfection we strive for. Now, when my family visits, I don't worry if everything's spotless or if every dish turns out exactly as planned. I focus on the laughter, the conversations, and the time we share. I've found that people remember the moments, not the details. And I've come to appreciate the small imperfections in life, because they remind me that life isn't meant to be perfect. It's meant to be lived. So if you find yourself still stressing over the little things, maybe it's time to give yourself a break. Let the minor imperfections be and focus on the beauty of the moment. After all, a life filled with happy memories and loved ones is the most perfect life we could ask for. Number 7, staying silent about your needs. When I was younger, I was the kind of man who would keep things to himself. I'd push through discomfort, hesitate to ask for help, and keep quiet about what I needed. Whether it was physical pain, loneliness, or even just wanting a bit of company, I'd often stay silent, not wanting to burden others. But over time, I learned that this habit did me more harm than good. My friend Charlie went through something similar. He had a bad hip that made walking difficult, but he never told anyone, not his wife, his kids, or even his closest friends. He didn't want to seem weak, he said, and he figured he'd manage somehow. But eventually, the pain became unbearable, and he had to have surgery. Afterward, he admitted that he wished he'd spoken up sooner. I realized that the people who love me wanted to help, he said. I just needed to let them. After 70, it doesn't make sense to keep your needs hidden. If anything, this is the time to be open and honest about what we need, whether it's help with a task, a bit of companionship, or even medical care. Staying silent doesn't protect anyone. It only creates distance and can lead to unneeded suffering. Our loved ones want to be there for us, and allowing them to help not only brings relief to us, but also brings us closer together. Now, if I need help carrying a heavy bag, or if I feel like having someone over for a cup of coffee, I say so. And I found that people appreciate my openness, My son even told me, "Dad, I'm glad you asked for help. It means I know what you need, and I get to spend more time with you." It's a reminder that sharing our needs can be a gift, both to us and to those around us. At this age, I believe we deserve to feel comfortable, supported, and understood. Staying silent doesn't achieve that. Speaking up does. So don't hesitate to say what you need. You may find that people are more than willing to help, and that's a comfort worth having. Number 8. Rushing through life. One of the greatest lessons I've learned as I've grown older is that life isn't a race. I spent so many years moving quickly, waking up to alarms, racing to meet deadlines, filling every day with tasks and appointments, and squeezing in moments with family and friends in between. It was as if life was one long checklist, and the goal was simply to get things done. But as the years went by, I started to wonder, what was I rushing toward? A close friend of mine, Bill, came to this realization too. Bill was always on the go. He worked hard, stayed active in his community, and rarely sat still. But after his first grandchild was born, something shifted in him. I remember him saying, "When I hold my granddaughter, everything slows down. I don't care about what's waiting on my desk. I just want to be in that moment with her." After 70, it doesn't make sense to rush anymore. If anything, this is the time to savor each moment, to take things slowly, and to appreciate the beauty of the present. We've spent enough years running around. Now we deserve to enjoy a slower, more peaceful rhythm. I find joy now in the little things, taking my time over a morning coffee, sitting on the porch in the evening, enjoying a book without worrying about the clock. And I'll tell you, the people around us feel it too. When I'm not rushing, I'm more present, more engaged. Conversations feel deeper, moments feel richer, and life itself feels fuller. I found that slowing down allows me to connect with those around me in a way I couldn't when I was always in a hurry. So if you find yourself still feeling the urge to rush, remind yourself that there's no finish line in life. We're here to experience it fully, to embrace each day with all its simple pleasures. Let's take our time, breathe deeply, and enjoy this stage of life without hurrying to the next moment. Number 9. Living in the past. One of the hardest things for many of us as we age is letting go of the past. We hold on to memories of the good times, the loved ones we've lost, and even the missed opportunities and regrets. But over time, I've come to understand that clinging to the past can sometimes prevent us from fully embracing the present. I had an old friend named George who would often talk about the good old days. Every conversation would eventually circle back to a memory of when he was younger, stronger, or when life was simpler. And while it's natural to cherish those moments, I noticed that he rarely talked about what was happening in his life now. He missed the laughter of his grandchildren, the quiet joy of a morning sunrise, and even the friendships he could have deepened in his later years. All because his heart was stuck in a different time. After 70, we realize that our memories are treasures, but they don't define who we are today. We've had the gift of a long life, filled with love, laughter, and even heartache. But this chapter, this stage, has its own beauty too. We can make new memories, find joy in small pleasures, and deepen connections with the people around us now. For myself, I've learned to cherish the past without living in it. I take time to honor those memories, but I don't let them pull me away from the life I have today. There's a certain peace in that balance, a joy in being here, in this moment, with all that life has to offer right now. As we reach this stage in life, it's clear that certain things just don't make sense anymore. We've learned that happiness isn't in the latest trend, the opinions of others, or the weight of old grudges. Instead, it's in living honestly, loving openly, and letting go of what no longer serves us. If there's one piece of wisdom I can share, it's this. Don't be afraid to make life simpler, lighter, and more joyful. Embrace the freedom of letting go, of living fully, and of savoring each day with gratitude. We've come a long way, and there's beauty in every wrinkle, every memory, and every heartbeat. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What lessons have you learned over the years? What things have you found that don't make sense to hold on to anymore? Please share your thoughts, your wisdom, and your stories in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going, because the journey of life is one we're all on together. And each piece of advice, Each shared experience helps make this journey a little richer for us all.